Hey guys, welcome back. So this next message, I've been working on it for a few days, and I've got a lot written down, and I still haven't even gotten through the entire story. And I just feel like the more that I work on it, the more I'm just putting information together that's already in here. So I'm just gonna go with it. I'm gonna try to follow what I've got, and just put my input into it. So that being said, I apologize in advance if it gets a little jumpy. But today I want to talk about Joseph in the Old Testament. And I was reading through this story, and it's just like some things popped out at me, and it relates to life, just everyday life. But I'm going to try to start in the beginning because there's some interesting things that happen. So in Genesis 37, we have Joseph's brothers plot to kill him. Reuben talked them into sparing his life. Now, I'm going to back up and just kind of start in chapter 37, verse 5. It says, "Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, 'Please hear this dream which I have dreamed. There we were, binding sheaves in the field. Then behold, my sheaf arose and also stood upright. And indeed your sheaves stood all around and bowed down to my sheaf.' And his brothers said to him, 'Shall you indeed reign over us, or shall you indeed have dominion over us?' So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words." So here we have, Joseph has a prophetic dream, and he told his brothers, he's like, "This is what happened. This is what I saw," and I don't think Joseph was going about it saying, "Hey, you guys are going to bow down to me." He was just telling them this was his dream. And then, so later on, Israel, Joseph's father, sent him out to his brothers, and he goes, he's looking for them, and in verse 18 he finds them. This part's interesting. I like this. It says, "Now when they saw him afar off, even before he came near them, they conspired against him to kill him. Then they said to one another, 'Look, this dreamer is coming. Therefore let us now kill him and cast him into some pit. And we shall say, some wild beast has devoured him. We shall see what will become of his dreams.'" And so here we are at the beginning of the story. We shall see what will become of his dreams. Yes, we will. We certainly will. It says, verse 21, "But Reuben heard it, and he delivered him out of their hands and said, 'Let us not kill him.' And Reuben said to them, 'Shed no blood, but cast him into the pit which is in the wilderness, and do not lay a hand on him, that he might deliver him out of their hands and bring him back to his father.'" So Reuben's plan was, don't kill him, just throw him in the pit, and we can just say a wild beast got him. And Reuben's plan was to go back and get him and bring him back. So Reuben was trying to save him. It came to pass that Joseph had come to his brothers. They stripped Joseph of his tunic, the tunic of many colors that was on him. And then they took him and cast him into a pit. The pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they're sitting around the campfire, and they're getting ready to eat, I believe. Yeah, sat down to eat a meal. And there were some Ishmaelites coming, and they're like, "Well, we can sell him. Why just leave him there in the pit? We can sell him and still, pull off the plan. We'll make his tunic look like it, some wild beast got a hold of it, and we'll have money and we'll be rid of Joseph. Perfect plan, right? So they do that. Reuben goes back and tries to get him and realizes he's gone. And I don't think Reuben even knows what happened. As far as Reuben knows, he's gone. He's dead. Whatever. So then we see in chapter 39 that Joseph was, so actually at the end of 37, Joseph was sold to Potiphar. And so in chapter 39, Joseph is put above, he's basically the highest rank in Potiphar's house. He's in charge of everything in Potiphar's house. Potiphar has a wife. His wife thinks that Joseph is attractive, tries to come on to him, and Joseph says no, because I have everything. I'm ahead of everything in this house. And, you know, he respects his master, and he says, I'm not going to do that. You know, I'm not going to lie with you. And so she grabbed a hold of his garment, and he took off. Well, now she's got his garment and tries to make it look like he tried to assault her. So she accuses him of assaulting her, and Potiphar throws him in prison. So here we have, so while he's in prison, and I'm really trying to get through the story so I can get to the end of it, because the end of it is where all the really, it all just blossoms. But he's thrown into prison. While he's in prison, he is again in a position of favor, in a position of power. In the prison, he becomes the top guy. You know, he looks after the other prisoners, things like that. A baker and a butler get thrown in there. Pharaoh's baker, his chief baker and butler, they get thrown in there. They have a dream. The dream troubles them. And Joseph, this part I do actually have underlined. So he sees that they're troubled. He can see it in their face. And he's like, well, why do you look so sad today? And they said to him, we each have had a dream, and there is no interpreter of it. So Joseph said to them, do not interpretations belong to God? Tell them to me, please. So that's in chapter 40, verse 8. And so he's saying, well, interpretations belong to God. So, you know, let me know. What was it? And so they told Joseph their dream. He interpreted it for them, and later on it came to pass. Their dreams, the interpretation that Joseph gave was accurate. Now he told them, when these things come to pass, don't forget me. Tell the Pharaoh, so that, you know, basically, like, you know, give me some props or something, like, you know, help me get on the Pharaoh's good side. They didn't. It was one of them survived, one of them did not. The chief baker saw that the interpretation was good, and he said to Joseph, I was also in my dream, and there were 3 white baskets. Okay. Okay, restore the chief butler. Okay, so the butler survived and didn't say anything. Well, 2 years later, so 2 years, he sat there in prison until the Pharaoh had a dream that was troubling him. And he couldn't figure it out. None of the interpreters could figure it out. And finally the butler was like, oh wait, there's this one guy in prison. You might want to talk to him. So they cleaned him up, shaved him, brought him into Pharaoh. And again, So in 41 verse 16, so Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, "It is not in me. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace." So he interprets the dream. And again, this is the big turning point in Joseph's life, because that dream was the 7 years of plenty and then the 7 years of famine. And this is where things start to really come together. So now Pharaoh sees that, okay, this is good. Now Pharaoh makes Joseph the top guy in Egypt. He has all the power. The only person in Egypt above him is Pharaoh, man of great power. So he puts him in charge of all of the harvesting, all of the inventory, keeping track of everything. Whatever Joseph says goes, you know. So there it is. Everything that has happened up to this point in Joseph's life has been set forth by God. He has been put in every single position that he has been in, has been for a greater good, a greater plan. All right. And because back when Joseph was 17 years old, he was just one of 12 brothers, and he was just a kid, you know, probably would grow up to be a shepherd. Who knows? But his brothers threw him in a pit, planned to kill him, ended up selling him into slavery, which is not a good place to be. And God had favor on him. Every position that he had, it was a position of power. And even when he was in prison, which also is not a good place to be, he's in a position of power. But all of that, from being thrown in the pit to being put in prison, because the fact that he was in the prison brought him into contact with the baker and the butler who needed an interpreter. He interpreted it, which that put him in the position to come before Pharaoh. Pharaoh recognized him and put him into another high power. So everything has happened up to this point to fulfill the dream when he was 17 years old. Remember, his brother said, let's see what will become of his dream. Well, those brothers set that into motion from that act. And this is the way that God works. It's not always on our time. I have written here, God's timing and purpose are unknown to us until the time and purpose is revealed. And so what happens is they have the 7 years of plenty, and then the 7 years of famine start, and all of Egypt is, they're in famine. People are coming to Joseph. We need food. Okay. And he has it all taken care of. And then he sees his brothers, because his brothers in the land of Canaan, they are desperate for food. Jacob, Israel, sends out the brothers minus Benjamin, because Benjamin and Joseph were his children that he favored. And since Joseph is gone, if anything were to happen to me, then Benjamin is the next one that gets everything, basically. And so he says, leave Benjamin here. You guys go get grain, get food for us, bring it back. So Joseph sees his brothers. He recognizes them. They don't recognize him. And when he sees them, he actually has to pull away and go somewhere and weep. Because he saw them and he recognized them. And he does that a few times in the story. So anyway, he asked them, well, what about the rest of your family? They say, yes, we have a father and a brother who is not with us, and one has passed. So that's the point where he turns and cries. And then, so it all comes down to they end up going back, getting Benjamin. He keeps one of them for collateral. I forget which one. I have it written down. I can't really find it right now. Here we go. Simeon. He kept Simeon as collateral so that they could go back, get Benjamin, bring him back. When he brought Benjamin, he saw him, and they all sat, and they all so they all got food. Benjamin's portion was 5 times more than any of the other ones. So he finally revealed himself to his brothers, and this is the part where things start really jumping out at me, because again, I'm just reading through the Bible, and I'm reading this story, and I'm like, oh, so in chapter 45, verse 8, I'm going to back up. I'm going to go back to verse 3. Says, then Joseph said to his brothers, I am Joseph. Does my father still live? But his brothers could not answer him, for they were dismayed in his presence. And Joseph said to his brothers, please come near to me. So they came near. Then he said, I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt. This part. But now do not therefore be grieved or angry with yourselves, because you sold me here. For God sent me before you to preserve life. For these 2 years the famine has been in the land, and there are still 5 years in which there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. And God sent me before you to preserve a posterity for you in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance. Verse 8. So now it was not you who sent me here, but God. He has made me a father to Pharaoh, and lord of all this house, and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. Boom. So there's his dream. And they even said earlier, when they first encounter him, before knowing who he was, they bowed down before him, just like the dream said. So, and this goes on, and Jacob ends up, he brings his father, he tells the Pharaoh, or one of the guards tell the Pharaoh, his brothers are here. Pharaoh treats his brothers well, treats his family well, says, give them everything they need, give them donkeys. He gave him, Pharaoh blessed this family. He gave Jacob, donkeys, camels, all kinds of stuff. And then he said, come back. So Joseph told him, let them know that you're shepherds. Tell them that you're shepherds by trade, because the Egyptians thought that they were above the shepherds. Shepherds was it's a dirty job. So he said, tell them you're shepherds, and he will give you the land of, oh goodness, started with a G. Anyway, he gives them their whole land. He gives them their own property. Says, here, do what you need to do out there. You have the best land, and whatever you need, it's there. So, Joseph ended up, let's see, I had some other stuff. Here we go. So this is the part that I wanted to get to. I know I'm jumping around, and it doesn't make any sense, and this video is really long already. But the point is, I wanted to get to chapter 50. Verse 19 says, Joseph said to them, do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about as it is this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore do not be afraid, I will provide for you and your little ones. And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So that's it. I could have probably done the whole message on those couple verses right there. But there are so many times in our lives, in my life especially, where I'm just like, why am I here? What brought me here? And I started trying to backtrack, and well, I made this decision and I made this decision and it had these consequences, and that's why I am where I am. But then there's other times where I'm sitting and I'm thinking, wow, how did I get here? And it's a series of events that led me to a specific place that God has made for me. And I mean, I saw those two parts where, you know, you meant evil, but God meant it for good. And there are times where people will be against you, and you might be struggling with something, or, you know, just something just might not be going right, and it might feel like the world's against you, but God meant it for good. So, you know, I know I jumped around a lot, but I just want to encourage you, if you're watching this, that, you know, things may look bleak. I mean, Joseph, his brothers wanted to kill him. He was thrown in prison for something he didn't do, you know, but it all worked out the way God wanted it to. And those things had to happen in order to put him in those places to be recognized by certain people or come in contact with certain people in order to get him to the place where he needed to be, because Joseph was the one. He needed to be in Egypt. He needed to interpret that dream. He needed to warn the Pharaoh that these things are coming, but we have time to prepare. He needed to be in charge of it, because when his brothers came, he needed to save them. He needed to bring them out of where they were and bring them to where they were going. He needed to do that. So all of those bad things that happened in his life, they had to happen. So just remember that when you're going through a hard time, when you're going through a struggle, I mean, don't sit there and think about, okay, well, maybe God has a better plan, because God does have a better plan, but don't sit there and try to think about what that plan is, because you're not going to know what it is. You're just not. And I've had to come to the point a few times where I had to quit thinking about something so much, because I read something, I believe it's Isaiah, maybe it's Proverbs, it's probably Proverbs, but it's, you know, God's ways are not our ways, and don't drive yourself crazy trying to figure out God's ways, because you're not gonna do it. It's not gonna happen. You might understand certain things about God, but you will never in this life know the ways of God. And God's ways are always better than ours. Sorry, it's a new phone. I'm still trying to learn the parameters of the thing. But anyway, I hope that got to somebody out there, and this video is about twice as long as I like it to be. But I really do like that story, and you know, I've read it a few times, but this last time that I read it, it's just things popped out, and it was relevant to my life right now, because of where I've been, where I came from. I was not living a good life. I was not doing the things of God, and I was in some really dark places. And you know, but every single one of those places led me to the next place, and I could not be happier with my life today. And thinking back just 6-7 years ago, I didn't want to live. And today, it's amazing to think about what has happened just in 7 years. In 7 years, my life has changed so much, and it's not because of some, like, you see the commercials, oh, my life changed because I called this number, and it's not like that. It's not because I have money, because I don't have any money right now. I am broke. For the next 6 days, all I have is Chef Boyardee, and that's what I'm living on. But it's not because I have money. And yes, I have a beautiful house, but it's not because I have a nice house. And I have a beautiful wife who supports me through everything. And it's not just because of her either, but it's because God has done all these things in my life and put them all together at the same time. I mean, there was a point in time where all I wanted was a woman who would love me. And God gave me that. And then I just wanted a job that I enjoyed, but also paid good. Because I've had jobs that I liked and I couldn't live off of them. But God gave me that. And then I wanted a house. I wanted a house, not just a home. I wanted a house in a safe place, in a nice area. And I'm a big fan of mountains and woods. God gave me that. So, you know, I had to go through what I had to go through to get where I am. And so did Joseph, and so do you. So, don't give up, don't lose heart, and keep the faith, because God is good all the time. Thanks for sticking with me. God bless you.